Hey everybody, Scotia here with a very special video for today because as of the release of this video, Street Fighter 6 released 1 year ago today. Now this year has simultaneously felt very long and drawn out, but it has also gone by fairly quick. But the purpose of this video isn't to really, critique the whole game. Like, I'm not going to go over a lot of what I talked about in my initial review that I did a year ago, but it's to mainly kind of look back on what Capcom have been doing with Street Fighter 6 since the game came out in June 2023, and just kind of give my thoughts on a lot of things, where I think the game is at, how I think Capcom can improve, how I think that they've been improving already. So unlike the review I did for Street Fighter 6, this is going to be a lot more freeform, a lot more rambly. I'm just kind of sitting here. I've got some notes in front of me of, topics and points I want to cover in this video. But overall, there is no real script here. There is no, preloaded format that I want to stick by like I did with the Street Fighter 6 review. It's kind of just me just sitting here, just giving my candid thoughts on the game. And, I'm going to be blunt on some areas. I may come across as kind of harsh or maybe even petty in some ways regarding some of my issues with the game, but it's been a year and I think they've excelled in some areas. I think they've fallen flat in some areas, and yeah, that's just what this video is going to be really. Like I said, it's not a review, it's more just like a reflective look back on the last year and the current state of this game and my hopes for the future as we go into year 2. So the only thing I do want to mention quickly before we, start going into things properly is when I did the review for Street Fighter 6 last year, I still mostly pretty much stand by everything that was in that review. Like all my thoughts, all my feelings and everything, like I still stand by it. The only thing I would personally go back and change is I would probably lower the score to about an 8 out of 10, because I gave the game a 9 when it came out. And I'm still standing by that score. Like, I'm not saying, I'm retroactively lowering the score, all these months later. Like, I still stand by the fact that the me that reviewed that game a year ago considered that game a 9, even though now I've sat on the game and I've spent more time with a lot of the features that have been there since launch. Like, for example, I've since, in the last few months, I've grinded all the master styles for every character in World Tour. So, I've done more of the game that was there that I didn't really get to, or didn't have the time to get to back at release. And yeah, so in that sense, if I was to review Street Fighter 6 day one now, I would probably give it an 8 out of 10. But I still stand by the fact that, at the time, with everything that was going on at that point in the world, and with Street Fighter and fighting games as a whole, I still stand by that 9 out of 10. It's just, now I feel like it's closer to an 8 for me personally. So for the format of this, I'm going to try and just go like month by month, content drop by content drop, and just go through, my thoughts on everything that was added, to the game as the game went along. Obviously, I'm not going to remember everything that happened. Like, for example, when I talk about what happened and what came out with Rashid and A.K.I, like, my memory isn't as strong about that stuff because it was a long time ago now. But I'm still going to try my best to go through everything and just kind of give my thoughts generally about the updates that, came with those characters, the characters themselves and all that. So we'll start 52 days after Street Fighter 6 came out, which is when Rashid released on July 24th, 2023. So this actually was the shortest gap between content just in general, never mind, characters or anything. Like, this was the shortest amount, I believe. Maybe Avatar stuff came out quicker between, releases, but as far as I know, this was like the only major thing that came out pretty quickly. So, Rashid, I'm not really going to talk about the gameplay side of things, like, just in general. Like, I know I could talk about the balance changes and all that. I'm not going to, for two reasons. One, the obvious statement, if you've watched this channel before, you'll have heard me say this 100 times, but I'm not a gameplay focused person, never have been, more than likely never will. Balance and stuff like that doesn't really mean anything to me. If I like the character, I play them, regardless if they're low tier, high tier, mid tier, it doesn't matter to me. And the other reason is because, to be honest, I probably have not played this game enough to really get an idea of how bad or good certain characters are. Like, for example, I know JP has been a very big problem throughout this game. I've seen a lot of people complain about JP being very strong. I've personally never had any problems with JP because most of the time I fight him, it's just, it's against the CPU. So yeah, like, I'm not going to talk about the balances or, like, was Rashid strong? Did they nerf him? Did they buff him? Was he too weak? Was he too strong? That's, I couldn't tell you even if I wanted to, which I don't. But yeah, I think Rashid overall, I'm not going to try and comment too much on the actual character choices because, God knows I've done that enough already, complaining about, the roster for this game so far. But all in all, I think Rashid was a good addition. I think, I think he was needed, to be honest. He kind of needed that kind of more lax character in the cast who was still, relevant to what's going on, but, a bit more of a jokey character that still had, his pride and sense of honor and, and just general stuff. I just think he was a much needed addition. It was also good to get somebody from Street Fighter 5 in the game. I still think, for me personally, I just think the game would have been better if Rashid and A.K.I came out with the base roster, like if the base roster was 20 characters. Obviously, I'm sure there was some development problem, which we'll get to. Like, the development side of things is a whole different topic for later in this video, but I think the both of them would have definitely helped round it off the base roster. But yeah, anyway, no, it was good to see Rashid. I'm glad he's in the game. Would I have wanted them this soon? Yes and no. Like, I wouldn't have complained, and I'm not complaining now. He never would have been one of my first picks, but it's still good to see him regardless. So his addition into World Tour was quite fun, actually. I remember at the time being really into it, because they actually made the whole quest of finding him and getting him as a master actually quite entertaining, because you had the side quests where you had to fight a Zam for a bit, and this is when they first introduced comics, the comic strips that you can find in World Tour. This was the first time they introduced that, and it was very exciting, and it was cool to have it kind of go on a treasure hunt of sorts, but the treasure is your master at the end of the, to teach you at the end of the treasure trail. Story-wise, I think Rashid was a fine addition. He didn't add a ton, it wasn't like, it didn't feel like a waste that he was there, but it was just kind of, yeah, it was just kind of basic stuff, but it's kind of my general overall issue with the story, which again, we'll probably get to later on. But yeah, like, it was a fairly harmless edition. Like, I didn't hate anything that was in his story. I didn't love anything. Actually, no, I do take that back. There was one thing I really, really liked, which was his last conversation you get for his bond, for maxing out his bond. You get that cutscene, you get that artwork and the reveal that Rashid's ancestors were driven from their land by the secret society. That was really cool. Like, that, I think, to be honest, that's still in this entire season has probably been my favourite bit of lore drop. So, who knows if that ever leads to anything, if we get the secret society back in this game or later games. That's something that can help tie Rashid, like move Rashid away from Shadaloo stuff, which he doesn't really have any involvement in anymore, and kind of move him towards the secret society and kind of rope him into that. Maybe he can do something with Necro or with Alex or some other characters are involved. I think having Rashid and Urian team up maybe as a sort of uneasy alliance would be really cool. So it definitely opens up quite interesting stuff. But yeah, overall, Rashid was a pretty fine addition. Like I said, I enjoyed the quest you do to find him. I thought it was very fun. But yeah, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't harmless. Well, it wasn't anything amazing, wasn't anything awful. It was just pretty box standard. But it was good to get the character so soon. Like, I was really surprised. I thought we weren't going to get a character until like at least August. But in some ways, I kind of think that might have been a detriment, releasing him so early. But I'll kind of talk about that after I finish talking about A.K.I. But yeah, overall, just a pretty decent, addition. I can't really complain about Rashid. It was fun to see him. His interactions were fun. Finding him was fun. He had some good, info and lore stuff and artwork. Yeah, I that's pretty much all I can say, really. Just a pretty good addition. He came out very soon, which was really good, which was fun. Yeah, just pretty good all round, really. So, 65 days after Rashid's release, we got A.K.I on September 27th, 2023. And to be honest, before the game came out and before we got the DLC, like, A.K.I was one of the newcomers I was probably the most interested in. I really liked her design. I was really interested in her links with Fang. And, I still like her. She's still one of my favourite newcomers. But I think gameplay-wise, there was definitely a bit of disappointment on my end. I don't know, I just didn't really gel with her gameplay-wise, which is fine. Like, I fully accept that not every character is going to just magically feel good when I play them. Like, a lot of other people I know and a lot of other people online really like playing as A.K.I, and that's great, I'm happy for them. But yeah, A.K.I was another really good addition. I still think she should have been in the base roster, because I think it's very clear that there was a certain theme that they were trying to go for, Capcom, with the newcomers in this game. Because if you include A.K.I, there's 8 new characters that were added to this game, which is, the most that's been added since Street Fighter 3 New Generation. And I definitely think there was a lot of New Generation parallels that Capcom wanted to do with this roster, especially the newcomers. So it's kind of a shame that, like, one of them got pushed back to DLC. Like, I get it, I guess it kind of made sense if Capcom want to have at least one new character in every season, that makes sense. It's still a shame, but at the same time, I think, her leaking with everybody in the big roster leak before the game came out, I think that definitely kind of hurt or hindered my perception of her as not feeling like she was DLC. Like, to me, she felt like she should have been in the base game because of that. But like I said with Rashid, it could have been a development thing. Maybe they were just running behind with her, they couldn't finish her in time, whatever. I mean, to be fair, this is another fairly short gap, 65 days, just over 10 days more, than what we had to wait for between releasing Rashid. So, it wasn't a really long wait, and I think the fact that these two were so close to each other and so close to the game's release, I think helps bolster the feeling I get that A.K.I and Rashid should have been in the base roster. I probably never will get over that feeling unless Capcom themselves come out and publicly just go, hey, like, we get it. They were never going to be, base roster. They were always going to be DLC, blah, blah, blah. If that's the case, then cool. I don't believe it, personally, because one of the big things that came with A.K.I with the World Tour update was that they added the China stage to World Tour. And yeah, this was probably the biggest thing that I kind of took as a sign that at the very least A.K.I was meant to be base roster, was because when the game came out, the China stage that's been in the game since the game came out, that was the only like stage that wasn't represented in World Tour at the time, and then obviously it came with A.K.I. So I think it's fairly safe to assume that A.K.I was more than likely meant to be the base roster, like she was meant to be in the base roster, and her and China was supposed to be in the game like from the start. It's not the end of the world, but it is a shame that like something like that did get pushed back. If it was for a legitimate reason, as in they just didn't have the time to finish her or finish adding the stage or whatever, then that's fine. Like, I get that. In that sense, I kind of do wonder why we got the China stage from the start. Like, they could have just put that in the season pass. I know, it's not really kind of worth kind of going like, oh, why didn't they charge us extra for a stage that could have been there from the start? But it just felt weird. It just felt weird to have that stage that was clearly for A.K.I, that's clearly meant to be in World Tour, but just neither of those things happened until A.K.I comes out. Like, it was just weird to me. As for A.K.I in World Tour, in all honesty, now that I think back on it, I actually think the stuff that came with A.K.I was probably my favourite out of the stuff that got added to World Tour this season or this year. We had the really cool cameo appearance from Fang, who's now called Fang Fei. Really cool. Like, this was the stuff I wanted to see. I wanted to see, previous Street Fighter characters show up in World Tour and interact and mention it. It doesn't necessarily have to, disclude them from being playable. I mean, obviously Fang is not going to be playable in Street Fighter 6 because A.K.I is just, she's there and people just like her way more, which is fair, I don't even mind Fang anymore, but, A.K.I's just kind of just taking everyone over by storm. So, it is what it is, but it's still something that I think has been sorely missing from the game, is cameos from, previous playable characters to help boost the story, to help boost the characters, to help make the world and the characters feel a bit more alive. And I think that's something that the game has been sorely lacking at this point. I mean, even now, like, all these months later, now that, we're a year to the game coming out, like, Fang is kind of the only one that's really like that. I mean, everyone else is, like, either being, like, NPCs or playable characters in other games, like Carlos from Final Fight 2, or Retsu from Street Fighter 1, and Mel from Street Fighter 3. Like, those characters have been there, and it's been cool to see them, but, like, I don't know, like, I feel like we really do miss, like, characters linked to other characters that have been playable across different games. It's just a shame to me that there's really been nothing like that in this game, and Fang was it was just really nice to get that and be like, oh, here's a playable character that, was playable in the past, and they still exist in this world, like, they're still hanging around, they're still doing stuff, they're not just, oh, I wonder what this character's doing, I haven't seen him in, like, 5 years. I just feel like Fang was a very good kind of addition in that sense. I think the story that A.K.I brought over with her was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't perfect or anything. I think it was definitely interesting because we had another comic added that had Fang talking about Ed, which kind of was a nice tease to Ed because he was the next character. But at the time, I was kind of getting a bit like, oh, because it seemed at the time it was setting up the return of Bison. But overall, yeah, it was good. Like, it was interesting. It was setting up stuff which was good, because I feel like with the way the story went, the main story of Street Fighter 6 went, nothing really got resolved. Nothing really got finished or concluded, and that's still the case. Like, even since Akuma's come out, nothing's really been concluded, but it was at least interesting to get an idea of possibly what was coming up in the future, even if that thing was just more Bison. Like, oh yeah, like, oh wow, I was surprised, JP and Bison, Fang and Bison, Fang wants to bring back Bison, JP wants to bring back Shadaloo using Ed, even though it's kind of boring because it's just more Shadaloo and Bison stuff, which we've had so often since Street Fighter 4. It was still at least like interesting, and and it's kind of funny because like it didn't even really involve A.K.I that much. I mean, she was I think she was literally like a messenger between like you and Fang. Like, you were kind of like she was sending intel to Fang and you were the one delivering it. But like, it wasn't even about A.K.I really. It was just kind of like A.K.I being involved in this grander thing as like just one piece of this overall puzzle. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. You know, I was definitely into it. It was just like interesting seeing where it goes, even if the topic itself wasn't really thrilling to me. But I think compared to what, you know, came before it and came after it, yeah, overall, I would say the stuff with A.K.I was probably the most interesting stuff that got added this year, which is kind of both cool and sad at the same time. That was kind of the best we got, really. But yeah, overall, just another solid addition. Like, I can't really complain about anything that came with A.K.I. I think A.K.I was a good character. I think she's interesting. I think she's great. I really like her personality a lot. You know, it's just the thing of, I can't shake the feeling that she should have been in the base roster. You know, I just think that's the biggest mark against her, really. And it's not even her fault, but it's just, I just can't shake that feeling that, like, I just can't look at her and go, like, yeah, you deserve to be season 1. Like, you couldn't have been any other character. Like, you had to be DLC. Like, no, I feel like her and Rashid just really should have been in the base roster. I think it just would have gone along a lot better, really. So, continuing on from that point, yeah, I think Rashid and A.K.I should have been in the base roster, because not only did they release, you know, fairly close to each other, but they released both of them fairly closely to the actual, you know, main game itself. Rashid was only 52 days after the game came out, and A.K.I was only 65 days after him. So if you think about it, like, A.K.I was only like 3 months or so after Street Fighter 6 came out. So yeah, they came out pretty close to each other, but I think the other main reason that I think Rashid and A.K.I should have been in the base roster is because the next character for Street Fighter 6, which was Ed, didn't come out until after 153 days after A.K.I came out. 5 months. 5 months to the day. That's how long it took for Ed to come out after A.K.I. What the hell was going on at Capcom at the time, man? Like, I would love to be the fly on the wall for that meeting when they all sat down and were like, okay, when is Ed releasing? And they pulled out the calendar and they counted 5 months and was like, yep, that's good enough. And this is the thing where it's like, at the same time, I kind of feel like I can't judge them too harshly because, you know, this is a new engine that they're using for the game. There's a lot of things they have to work out. There's a lot more detail going into these characters. But 5 months is just insane. Like, it is the absolute, like, most unwilling to go. Like, anything longer than 5 months, and I would have flat out been like, no, something was wrong. Like, they fucked up. I still think they fucked up, to be honest. Like, something had to have gone wrong. They had to, when you look at the whole, like, pipeline of production for this game, from concept, choosing the character, you know, conceptualizing the character, going, how can this character fit in the game? How can we do this? What's the story? What's the design? Going from that to them producing the character, you know, doing, like, rigging their animations, recording their animations, mocapping them, and then modeling the character, doing the voice work, to then releasing. There has to be, at some point in that production pipeline, there has to be an issue. Like, something has to have gone wrong for it to take 5 months between characters. Now, granted, I do believe there was like a data mine or something that kind of proved that Ed was supposed to actually come out at the end of January, but Capcom decided to hold him back for Tekken 8. Which, you know, if that's the case, I totally get that. That's completely understandable. You know, I think that was a good decision then, if that was the case, to hold Ed back. But even then, 4 months is still pushing it. That's almost still double of how long it took for A.K.I to come out after Rashid. And yeah, I just don't know what the problem was here. And this is what I was saying earlier about, like, I kind of feel like Rashid and A.K.I releasing so soon after Street Fighter 6 came out was almost detrimental in a way. Because we got two characters fairly close to each other in rapid succession, and then we just had this massive gap of nothing. And this was by far the worst part of this last year, was this 5 month gap. This was the lowest, like, this whole period was the lowest I'd been on the game. So yeah, like, it's at this point I kind of start wondering, like, would it not have been better to have delayed A.K.I and Rashid? You know, would it have not made more sense to push A.K.I to, say, November and then push Rashid to August, so that there's just a bit more of a gap? Like, we didn't need Rashid a month after the game came out. Like, people were still messing around with it, people were still playing World Tour, people were still, you know, figuring out the game, figuring out the most optimal ways to use drive impact in the drive system, or like to figure out like combos and stuff and optimal stuff. You know, people were still figuring out the game a month after the game came out. We didn't really need Rashid that quickly, you know? And I think I just can't help but wonder, like, what was the point of releasing Rashid and A.K.I so close to each other so soon after the game came out, if you were going to then spend 5 months with nothing, pretty much nothing? And yes, stuff did release at that time, and I will kind of cover that stuff, especially the Outfit 3s. But for the most part, there was just nothing, and like, even Capcom just didn't talk to us that much during this period. Like, it was almost radio silence. Like, it was just nothing going on. It was just, like, it was just nothing. It was just 5 months of just relative nothing. It was just, here you go, here's the game. And yeah, it got boring. And it's that thing of, you know, I guess some people who are older fans who play older games will be, oh, you know, you don't want to talk about, at least you're getting character. Whoa, 5 months is nothing. Like with Street Fighter 4, we had to wait a year for Super, and it's like, yeah, I do understand that, but you know, when that update came out with Super Street Fighter 4, you were getting like a lot of characters at once. I can't remember how many characters Super added, but it was a lot. It was like maybe 10ish characters at once. You know, 5 months for one character is just like, man, like I said, like that to me is just pushing it. Like that's just, you know, I can understand with the development and how long things are going to take now, just in general with game development, like not just with Capcom, but just across the entire industry. Like I get it. Like, and I get, you know, there is a lot more depth going on with the characters, with the character models. There's so much more detail and stuff like that in the RE engine and the muscle definition and the sweat. You know, I know there's a lot more that goes into it, but 5 months is just, it's just ridiculous. Like, there's no other word for it. It's just beyond kind of reasonable, really, to make people wait that long. Like, in your first season as well. I mean, because the gap between Kage and E Honda poisoning Lucia for Street Fighter 5, like, that was longer. Like, that was a much longer gap, but at the same time, that was the game's, like, 4th season. And to be fair, those 3 characters that came out after Kage came out at the same time. So, you know, it made that wait a bit more worth it, because you weren't just getting one character, you were getting, you know, 3 characters, and they were all fairly good characters, even Honda. But it's just insane to me to, you know, a 5-month gap in your first season is just insane. Like, I think, like, the only game, like, recently that's done something like that is, like, DNF Duel. And I can't think of another game that was more, like, dead on arrival than DNF Duel. Like, nobody gave a shit about that game after a while. So, you know, like, I can understand why that game took so long to get content, because even Arc Systems Works gave up on it after a while by the sounds of it. But yeah, man, like, it was just a rough period, and, you know, I can't help but wonder why they pushed out A.K.I and Rashid so close together after the game's release, when they could have delayed them. They could have delayed the game and have the two of them be in the game. Because if you had released the game, say, in August or, you know, September, you know, yeah, that's a few months delay, but then you include A.K.I and Rashid in it, and then you're only waiting, what, September, October, November, December, you're still waiting a few months between, you know, A.K.I and Ed. Like, sorry, the game coming out and Ed coming out, but, you know, it's still better than, you know, I don't know. It's hard to describe, because obviously I'm not a game developer. I don't know the ins and outs of the production process and how everything goes and distribution and all that. But to me, like, that 5-month gap would have felt better if everybody was starting on the same foot learning the game with 20 characters, instead of, you know, having A.K.I, like, one new character. Everybody's kind of already figured out the other cast members, you know, including Rashid, and then just getting, okay, here's one character, everybody figure out this one character for 5 months, that'll keep them busy. Like, what? Like, no, of course it didn't. Like, not everybody loved A.K.I, like, not everybody liked how she played. So, like, quite a few people did, but, you know, just going, here's one character, like, have fun with this one character for 5 months and then just going away. Yeah, just silly to me. I think there was multiple ways they could have done this better, like, just handled this gap. If they had to have a gap this long for whatever reason, I just think there was so many other ways they could have handled this. Like, this was absolutely the biggest fumble, I think, overall. Yeah, no, sorry, I was just thinking about something else I'm going to be talking about later. Yeah, definitely the biggest fumble. I think it's up there, top 2 at least for sure. Like, but I think personally this was their biggest mistake that they made this entire, like, in this entire first year of the game, was just letting this 5-month gap go along, like, without really doing or saying anything. Yeah, just massive mistake on Capcom's part. Like, they could have handled this so much better. But those 5 months eventually did come to an end, and at the end of those months, we got Ed. And I said a lot in the last year, and also, you know, before the game came out, that Ed was one of, if not the most, you know, character I was looking forward to out of the whole roster. I loved his redesign. I was always a fan of Ed. He was never, like, my top most requested. I wouldn't even say he was in my top 10 most wanted characters in the game, but I did want Ed in this game eventually. So I was happy that he got added to the game. And, you know, I think overall he is still probably the character I'm the most happy with. He's the character I've probably gelled with the most out of the whole roster, which is good. You know, it's good when the character you were most excited for ends up, you know, fulfilling your desires or your wants in that sense. You know, it was good, and I'm glad. And, you know, he's sick in this game. I think he's awesome. Like I said, easily my favourite addition in this season. Easily one of my favourite characters in the game as a whole, like, including the base roster. But yeah, I think they did an amazing job with Ed. Like, I think they absolutely nailed him. I think they made him way more appealing to, you know, the general masses. I mean, Ed was definitely the character this year where everyone was like, why is this guy in the game? Like, do we really, like, no, who wanted Ed? And it's like, I wanted Ed. Not straight away, not this soon, but, you know, I did want Ed eventually. And yeah, overall, I just don't really have any major complaints. The only real complaint I have about Ed is just his story in World Tour was a little bit disappointing in the sense that, I don't know, it just felt like, nothing much really happened, which is a shame because he was the story character for this season. He was the character that from the start everyone was like, well, he's going to be the most like relevant character to the story. He's going to bring the most to the story, the most info, the most revelations. And I mean, he did answer a lot of questions. I mean, like I said when I was talking about A.K.I, like I was confused with what the original intention that JP had with Ed, and this clarified it wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't JP trying to use Ed to resurrect Bison. It was JP wanting Ed to just flat out be the new leader of Shadaloo, like as he is. In that sense it was really cool. But just overall, like his role in World Tour itself, it was just very lacking. I felt there just wasn't a lot to really go on. But it's not so much an Ed problem. It's just the overall story of Street Fighter 6 and the way it's been told so far is just it falls flat a lot. There's just the story just doesn't really go anywhere, and it's been a problem like that since 5, to be honest. But yeah, so in that sense, I was disappointed. I was expecting more kind of revelations, more of a clear sign of where things were going. Little did I know that would come with the Akuma update. But yeah, overall, like I was very happy with Ed. Was it worth the 5-month wait? Yes and no. It was definitely good to finally get him, and that kind of sweet release of like after all that time being like, oh, finally I can actually go on this game. Because like, I didn't mention it last time, but when I was talking just earlier about how bad that gap of time was, the 5 months between Aki and Ed, and I was saying like that was the lowest I was with the game. Like I did not touch that game like for 5 months. Like I may have gone on it once or twice. I think I was helping someone do some avatar battles for drive tickets every now and then. But I didn't actively go on Street Fighter 6 and go like play a bit of World Tour or go on an arcade mode or anything like that. Like I did not touch the game like willingly. I only went on there to help other people out. That's how low the game I was. And now it's like, I'm still not playing the game a ton, but like I'm definitely playing it more often since Ed came out, because he's the first character I'm like, oh, I actually enjoy playing as this character. Not enough to main this character. Like when other characters come out that I like more, like if Alex ever gets added or if Sean ever gets added, like Ed will drop further and further down. But for now he is probably the closest I have to a main in this game, which is kind of crazy that it took that long to get a character to get that character for me. But yeah, overall, Ed was sick. Like his stage that came with it, because we finally got our first DLC stage. Yeah, really, really cool stage. Loved the visuals on it. Loved the ruined lab aesthetic and the kind of the links and kind of hints to it being one of the SIN labs from Street Fighter 4. Just really, really cool stuff. Like I said, I was pretty satisfied overall with how Ed turned out. He was a pretty fun addition. They really, really improved him a lot overall, I felt. Yeah, overall, I really can't complain. He turned out really well, and I was really happy with it. It was really cool. Like his side quests were really fun as well. The side quest where you go and find Falk, you go and try and find Falk. Was really cool. I wasn't expecting that. I wouldn't be surprised if Falk shows up at some point in the future. But yeah, like that's all I can say really. Like it was just a really cool addition. He came with some cool stuff. Like I said, my only issue was that I just wish story-wise he had a bit more going on. Like he just doesn't do anything outside of that, metro station underground in Metro City. Just stays there, and like that's kind of it. And it's like, like I think the arcade did a good explanation to kind of like explain why he was in that state, like why he was where he was, and that's fine. And his Bond stuff was really cool because you definitely got a lot more like much needed info on Neo Shadaloo, including some names of characters like the knife guy from Neo Shadaloo that showed up at the end of Ed's ending in Street Fighter 5. Like we finally got his name. Like we've not known that guy's name since like 2017 when Ed came out. We finally got his name in this game when Ed came out in Street Fighter 6. And it's like, much needed deep dive into Neo Shadaloo, how they work, how their relationships are with everybody, the dynamic of the group. The Neo Shadaloo naming convention, that reveal that it wasn't their name, it was a name that people just gave them. And now it seems like JP's Neo Shadaloo was trying to come up on the name and take over with that name. It's setting up interesting stuff. Is it the most interesting stuff? No, like I said, I would rather it wasn't about Bison again. But you take what you get. And overall, I was mostly happy with Ed. I think the World Tour stuff side of it was fine. He was definitely the least, the least hardest to find. Like his stuff was fairly basic to find Ed. He was a very simple quest from what I remember. just talk to like one guy a couple times, fight, you know, 2 or 3 people, and then he just shows up. But yeah, like overall, it was fine. Like I said, I would have liked it if it was a bit more, but it is what it is, really. I think overall it was still satisfying. It was still good to get more in, just to get more from Ed, more into his relationship with Balrog as well. Even though obviously Balrog didn't show up or, you know, didn't have that much of a presence, it was nice to get a bit more, you know, history between those two. And obviously, like I said, the much needed deep dive into Neo Shadaloo and how they work. Yeah, no, it was decent. Like, it did the job, really. Like, it wasn't earth-shattering, it wasn't amazing, wasn't awful. It was just good, which is kind of all it really needs to be, really, I guess. And then we finally reached the end, because 85 days after Ed came out, on May 22nd, 2024, Akuma released for Street Fighter 6. Now, the day that I'm recording this is actually the day after I did the Akuma stream, so this is actually the 23rd of May, so it's the day after Akuma released, because I want to get this video done and ready before June 2nd. So, you know, like, Akuma's definitely more fresh in my mind. If you watch that stream, you'll know some of my feelings on it. Overall, Akuma was definitely, in terms of just the World Tour Edition side of it, Akuma was the worst in my opinion. His story was nothing. I wasn't expecting it to be anything major, but it was, even with my low expectations, I was really just shocked at how kind of just poor his story was overall. Nothing new was really revealed. There wasn't any deep insights into Akuma as a person. They didn't do anything new or different with his, you know, dynamic with Ryu. There was no further talks or, you know, just conversation. Just nothing. It was just the same stuff that's been in every game, like since at least Alpha. Like it's just the same shit again, and it's just, yeah, I was really disappointed in it. I thought the quest to get Akuma as a master was awful. Just the most boring kind of like fetch quest, not even fetch quest, but like just the most boring kind of like generic back and forth quest of like, you know, go to this building here, fight some copy fighters, go talk to Retsu, go to Akuma, fight Akuma, go back to Retsu, go back to fight Akuma, go to fight Ryu, go to fight Akuma, go to fight Luke, come back and fight, you know, just the most like back and forth, just nonsense out there. It was really, really bad. Just really, really poor quest design. They massively bumped up Akuma's level, which I get it. It's Akuma. You want, you know, trying to sell how tough and strong he is, which I get. But they made him like level 83 or something. So he just destroyed my character a lot. I wasted so many health items, you know, on that stream last night, trying to just finish all the fights in order to see everything. Just ridiculous, really. Like, just overall, yeah. So the World Tour side of it, I thought was very disappointing. The fighting ground, like his arcade mode, was just boring. Just nothing interesting. Like, just the same boring stuff they've been doing with Akuma since 4, you know. Like, at least Alpha, he had his rivalry with Gen, which was interesting. Like, it was, at least there was something there with that, but we don't even have that anymore, because we still don't know if Gen's even dead or alive yet. As a character, I think Akuma's fantastic, to be honest. I think he's really fun. I mean, if you may have gathered by now, I'm not an Akuma fan. I've never really cared for the character. I feel like he's absolutely overrated. I've never gotten the appeal for him. Well, I get the appeal, I just don't feel the same way about him. The evil Dark Shoto guy just does nothing for me. It's, you know, I've always kind of not been annoyed at his presence, but his presence has always just been like, okay, here's Akuma again. So, you know, him being last has always kind of been like the part of this year, because it's like I have to go through a whole year just to get Akuma at the end. But, you know, character wise, like gameplay wise, absolutely fantastic. I think they absolutely nailed him. I think this is by far the best Akuma has ever been, like flat out. Like, even as a big of a, you know, Street Fighter 3 fanboy as I am, like, he's nothing in Street Fighter 3 compared to 6. Like, they absolutely did an amazing job with him. He's really fun to play. I'm not going to main him or anything, but, you know, I may play Akuma more than I normally do, which is to say almost not at all. You know, in the other games, I almost never play Akuma. But, like, I will probably hop on every now and then and give him a go, because he's genuinely fun to play. His presence is awesome. His aura, like the taunts and all the stuff he does, just the way he moves, his mannerisms, like the kind of smoggy, fog, elusive thing that they're doing with him. Just really, really cool stuff. Like, a really, really fun character to play. Like, I really, really enjoyed playing as him. Just story-wise, just absolutely awful. Like, just genuinely, like, I honestly, like, E-Honda tier for me in terms of, like, you're only here because you're a Street Fighter 2 character and you're popular. Like, that's the only reason this, you're like story-wise, you have no reason to be here, which is fine. Not every character has to be relevant, but, like, yeah, like, I even thinking about him in Street Fighter 3, like, because I routinely forget, like, Akuma is even in Street Fighter 3, because as much as I love that game and I love that story, Akuma in Street Fighter 3 is boring as shit, because his story just is the same as it was in the previous game. And in 6, it's like there's been even less progress made, you know, like at least in Street Fighter 3, you know, Ryu and Akuma had some interesting conversations. In Street Fighter 6, they don't even have that. Like, they just fight again. Like, Ryu, who's still at peace with himself, is just kind of like, yeah, I'm not bothered. Like, this is just a normal fight. You know, Akuma wants this fight to the death. I get that, but yeah, just even with all that in mind, and Akuma and my low expectations, like, I was not expecting anything earth-shattering. Yeah, even I was just like really disappointed in just how boring it overall was. Yeah, the side quests were awful, like I said, like finding him was awful. The side quests that you get for doing a star rank, I mean, like they were awful as well. Yeah, just to be honest, in some ways, I feel like the stuff they added with Akuma, mostly relating to Akuma, is like some of the worst aspects, like of just World Tour in general. Just really just kind of just tough enemies with loads of health that just destroy your health. Just poor fights, poor quest design. Yeah, it's the worst aspects of World Tour just rolled into one character update. Really, it was really disappointing. I really didn't like any of it. But like I said, as a character, fantastic. I think character-wise, like gameplay-wise, Ed and Akuma were definitely the highlights of the season. I think in some ways they kind of made Rashid and A.K.I kind of not feel lesser, but they just didn't seem as impressive to me now that I look back at the whole cast and I think about, you know, just how all 4 of those characters moved and interacted. Like, I think Ed and Akuma are so much, like, just leagues above A.K.I and Rashid. It's kind of crazy, really. So now that we're done talking about the characters, I do want to talk about other stuff that was added to the game throughout this last year. And obviously the big one I haven't really touched on yet is the Outfit 3s that were released for the base roster characters, the initial 18. Because yes, while I was going on about the big gap, you know, between A.K.I and Ed and how there wasn't anything really going on during that time, there was something. We did get the Outfit 3s. But I have, you know, issues with the way that these costumes were handled in more ways than one. So the first batch of Outfit 3s that were released for the initial, you know, base roster of 18 characters, like I said, they were released 65 days after A.K.I came out on December 1st, 2023. And my issue, like straight off the bat, was I didn't see why they had to wait so long to release them all at once. Like, yes, I get it, you know, it's a big drop at once, nobody's waiting for their character to get their costume, but I can't help but think, would it not have been better to, you know, release these costumes in batches, you know, batches of 5 or whatever, or however equal it could have been, you know, just release them at certain times to go like, hey, here's the first batch of costumes, like here's Guile's, Jury's, Manon's, and Ryu's, like here's the first batch, like here you go, and you release them in September with A.K.I, and then like a couple, like I don't know, a few weeks or a month later, okay, here's the next batch, here's Chun-Li, here's Blanca, here's JP, and here's, you know, Dalsums or something like that. Why not do that? Like, why not do it that way to help make that gap, those 5 months that you know are going to be fairly light because you've got nothing else really planned, you know, make that feel a bit fuller instead of, you know, waiting for months, just every now and then going like, oh, here's more concept art for these costumes. We're not telling you when they're coming out, by the way, but here's more concept art for these costumes that you can't buy yet. Like, here you go, we'll see you whenever we decide to release them, and then you release them pretty much at the last possible point before the end of the year, or as close as to it as you can get. You know, I just can't help but think it would have been so much better. Like I said, I get they wanted to release them at once. They wanted to do it, you know, so nobody felt left out, and you all did it at once, and it was everybody was equal and on the same level. I get that, but like, I don't know, I just feel like it would have been so much better to just go, okay, here's a batch here, here's a batch here. Obviously, people are going to be upset. Like Chun-Li fans, if they don't get their costume first, of course they're going to. You know, I'm not singling out Chun-Li fans. This is just a general thing. Could be anybody. Could be Jury. You know, fans of any character. You know, if Jury doesn't get her costume, you know, first, or, you know, in the first 2 batches, like, oh, well, we got to wait, you know, till batch 3. You're going to get that, and I get that, and I understand that they wanted to avoid that. But at the same time, it just would have helped that gap feel a lot better. Like, that we weren't getting, like, just lessen the period of time that we felt like we weren't getting anything. The other issue, and the one I take way more umbrage with, is that the pricing for these was absolutely ridiculous. So obviously, you know, Street Fighter 6 has microtransactions, it has, you know, a coin system that you can pay real money for in order to get. And for the most part, you know, before this point in time, like, it wasn't too bad. Like, I think the biggest issue was just colours, I think. Like, buying colours was a real pain, I believe. But I'm not I don't, I just use the default colors for every fighting game, like not just Street Fighter or anything like that. Like I always use the default colors. So that's something that didn't really affect me personally. But yeah, so one outfit 3, so just one costume cost 300 coins, and you could only buy the coins on your respective store, whether it's the PlayStation Store, the Microsoft Store, Steam, or whatever. You can only buy the coins in increments of 250, 610, 1250, and 2750. So what you may have noticed there was that there is no 300 coin option. The closest you can get is 250 coins, and for me, in my Brexit box, which is pound sterling, was £3.99, so just under £4. Now, like £4, okay, like £4 for a costume is about what it costs for Street Fighter V's costumes. But the issue here is that it's only 250 coins you're getting, you're not getting the 300. So if you wanted to buy one costume, and you didn't, like say you had 0 fighter coins at that point, you didn't buy any battle passes, you didn't have anything like that, you just purely, you had 0 coins, or you only had drive tickets. If you wanted to buy one costume, you either had to buy 250 coins twice, so you had to spend about £8 to get 500 coins, so you're still getting, way more, you're getting about 200 more coins than you initially wanted, or you had to buy 610 coins and then just buy another costume. So if you specifically were somebody who only wanted one costume, you had to pay more money than what you wanted. And to me, that is just ridiculous. That is so absolutely predatory. That is so scummy. And this is stuff that is like prime tactics from mobile games. Like a lot of mobile games do this exact thing, where there'll be a skin, a character, a weapon, something like that. Like something that game does, and it'll be priced at like 500 gems. But the only gems you can buy from the store is just under. So you have to buy that limit twice. It's absolutely scummy. It's so predatory. Like this is the stuff people have been decrying about, like mobile games and microtransactions for years, and to see it in a mainline Street Fighter game is just depressing. It makes me lose respect for Capcom. And yeah, like this is stuff that it has no place in Street Fighter. It has no place in any modern console game. It's absolutely ridiculous. I lost a lot of respect for Capcom for them doing this, and it's still like this, by the way, because the outfit 3s for the year 1 characters, so A.K.I, Rashid, Ed, and Akuma, they only came out with Akuma yesterday, or a few days ago if you're watching this on June 2nd. But say you just wanted to buy one of those skins, like say for example you really like A.K.I.'s outfit 3 and you just want that one, you still have to pay 300 coins, so you either have to buy 250 coins twice or buy one 610 coin bundle. It's ridiculous. Like I said, has no place in Street Fighter. Like this is beyond the worst of fight money. I know people, decried fight money and, were wanting to hang fight money from the highest rafter for years because they thought Capcom were ripping them off somehow. Believe me, this is what it looks like when Capcom rips you off. This is far worse than the worst of fight money ever was. So yeah, overall, the outfit 3s left a really bad taste in my mouth. I felt like the way they released them was just poor. I think they could have done a much better job at that to help just make the gap between A.K.I and Ed feel less dry and barren. And the pricing of it is just ridiculous, because if you wanted to buy every costume, and I know, I've already heard it from people at the time, you don't have to buy every costume if you don't want to. I know, but just say you do. Just say you want to buy every costume, hypothetically. But if you wanted to buy, this is just the initial base roster, by the way. This isn't even counting the outfit 3s for A.K.I, Rashid, Ed, and Akuma. If you just wanted to buy all 18 base roster outfit 3s, that's going to cost you £79.98, because you have to buy 2 of the 2,750 coin bundles, which for me are £40 each. So in dollars, that's $101.81. So for 18 costumes, you would have to pay over $100. And they got shit for this at the start, like when this came out and everybody realized this. They got shit, but like most things, it just kind of blew over and everybody just moved on. I'm still pissed off about this. I still think this is an absolute joke. And I bought some of the costumes and I felt like an idiot afterwards, because I was like, I've just basically, not only have I supported this extremely scummy predatory business tactic, but I just felt like I got robbed. I felt like I didn't get my money's worth out of it. I bought about 4 or 5 costumes, and afterwards I was like, why did I do that? I don't even really play this game that much. I got swept into the hype of it, and I'm not blaming anybody for that except me. That was my fault. But yeah, no, I felt like an idiot, and I can't help but just feel like other people, if there were other people out there who bought these costumes and felt like an idiot, it's just a shame. It's a shame. preys on people who get sucked into the hype. It preys on people who, fall for this stuff. It's why, mobile games are so lucrative, because people, they get sucked in so easily into doing this stuff, and it's just a shame. And to see it in a full price, I bought the Ultimate Edition, which I absolutely do regret. I bought the Ultimate Edition, so I spent like about £100 on this game as a pre-order, and I bought that, and I still have to pay, like, I can't remember how many costumes I ended up buying, but let's just say 4. Like, I still, that's still like at least £20, maybe a bit more, that I would have had to have paid for, just on top of the 100 I got for the season pass and the ultimate and all that. Yeah, it's an absolute joke. It has no business being in the game. Capcom are absolutely scummy for it. The fact they haven't changed it after all the blowback they got for it is insane. But yeah, very disappointing. And this is the second worst thing they did this entire year. Was this? I think the first one was the gap in time between A.K.I and Ed. This is a very close second. In some ways, this could be top. Like, that's why I hesitated earlier, because at the time I was like, this feels worse. And in some ways, it probably is worse. But, it is a very close, like, top 2. Like, this was just ridiculous. So as we get to the end of this video now, I just wanted to give some extra thoughts on some of the things that were added to this game throughout the last year. I definitely think one of the more kind of overlying disappointing factors of this game is kind of the abundance of Avatar/Battle Hub content that was added, kind of almost at the expense, it felt like, nearly, of the rest of the game getting content. I mean, we've gotten a ton of Avatar and Battle Hub gear, to customize your avatars with, and stuff for in the Battle Hub. And I see people every now and then when, these updates and these collabs come out and like, oh, who's still buying this stuff? Like, surely, this can't be that popular. But, I still see people wearing, Ninja Turtle skins. I see people still wearing the stuff from the Spy Family collab. Like, people are buying this stuff. But it does really just feel like a lot of this stuff is just so geared towards the Battle Hub and the avatars. Yeah, almost at the expense of the rest of the game. Like, so many things that we could have gotten for, other people to play in the main game, in Fighting Ground and in online, and there's just really not been anything. It's a real shame. Like, we could have gotten, if you're doing Ninja Turtle stuff, as a collab, why couldn't we get, Ninja Turtle skins for the whole cast? Why couldn't we get Chun-Li as Yor from Spy Family? So many other things they could have done, on top of the Avatar collab stuff, but it's all been Avatar collabs. And I know the obvious answer is kind of like, it's just easier to make stuff for the avatars because it's just generally lower in quality than what would be needed for, the main roster and stuff like that. And I get that, it's a shame, but I do understand that. But when so much of the stuff that is added to the game, like consistently, by the way, because like I've been saying all this stuff about, there was this gap of time, they didn't do this for this long. Like, they were still doing stuff, they were still doing fighting passes, they were still doing, adding all this stuff to the game, but it was all minor stuff. It was all stuff for Avatar battles. It was all stuff for Battle Hub. It was all stuff that just purely were focused on that. And you just got the rest of the game that gets nothing. Like, you could have added a side quest, your special for World Tour, where you interacted with a Ninja Turtle. Like, you could have done something like that. You could have added that to incentivize people to go back into World Tour. You could have done, I don't know, you could have done a special Fighting Ground, special battle where, you could have a character fight, different Ninja Turtles based on avatars. You can put an avatar that's dressed as a Ninja Turtle into the extreme battle in Fighting Ground. They could have done something like that so that these things are spread throughout the whole game, and they just didn't. And it's just very disappointing, and it feels like catering really hard to the portion of the fan base that are going to pay money, basically, because the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle skins were $15 each. One turtle was $15 when you bought the whole set, and there's 4 of them, and like, people bought that. People, like, I went on the game within an hour of that update coming out, and the Battle Hub was filled with people dressed as turtles. People bought that shit happily, and all the power to them if that's what they want to do. But like, it just felt like the rest of the game didn't get anything, and I think that's such a shame, because so there's been so much cool gear that's been added, like Mega Man stuff. Just all sorts of stuff, like all the music that got added as well in the fighting passes, you couldn't use in the rest of the game. And obviously that's been fixed now with the jukebox. And I think the jukebox is definitely a great addition, and I'm glad it's in the game. But like, it just feels like such a missed opportunity. Like they could have, you know, done so much with these collabs. They could have put these things in World Tour. They could have added them to Fighting Ground. They could have added, because I mean, like even the special battles that Street Fighter V used to have, where you could fight like Shadow or Shadow Lady, you know, like these special fights. You could have done that. You could have added like a special fight to Fighting Ground where you could fight like Yor, you know, from Spy Family. You could have fought Turtles, you know, in the Extreme Battle or like whatever it's called. There's so many other things they could have done, and they just never did, and it's such a shame. And even like Giant Attack, which, you know, recently came out with Akuma, like, you know, I think that's a great addition, and I haven't really played much of it, but from what I've seen, it's really fun, and I think, you know, I think it's cool that they've added it. At the same time, though, it's still a Battle Hub thing. It's still something you got to go into Battle Hub for. It's just another thing that Battle Hub gets that the rest of us don't. And it's just a shame. Like, it just feels like, I don't want to say neglecting the rest of the game, but I definitely feel like Avatar and Battle Hub gets more of a focus because it's just easier to make content and it's easier to sell content through there. I think that's very disappointing, and I think for Season 2 and Year 2 and beyond, they need to fix that. Basically, I think they really need to adjust how much, you know, focus they give to particular aspects of the game. Like, obviously World Tour is a big part of it. Obviously new characters come out for Fighting Ground, but this stuff only really happens a couple times a year, you know, like Rashid and A.K.I were like a couple months near the end of the year. So far, like Ed and Akuma have been 2 months. Like we're almost halfway into the year now. So there's only 2 months we've gotten like out of the 6 months of the year where we've gotten, you know, something added to Fighting Ground and World Tour. Whereas, you know, Battle Hub gets new stuff every month. And it's, you know, I just think the priorities need to be adjusted a bit, where it's like, don't neglect Battle Hub either, but just bring everybody to a similar level. That's all I really want. So yeah, that's my 1 year later kind of retrospective review of Street Fighter 6 across the last year. You know, I may have been overly negative on some stuff. I said at the beginning I could have sounded petty at times in terms of what I was complaining about. Like I said, I think Street Fighter 6 is a good game, but I think overall, I think the lightning in a bottle that Capcom captured when they released this game, I feel like that's gone now, to be honest. Like, I don't think I'm not saying the game's not special anymore, but like, I think a lot of the goodwill Capcom brought back after, you know, how disastrous Street Fighter V was. I said in the review for Street Fighter 6, like, that came out last year, I said even then, Street Fighter 6 is a story of redemption, and I don't know what Street Fighter 6 is a story of now. It could be a story of going back on promises. It could be a story of, you know, dropping the ball. I don't know. It feels kind of harsh or kind of jumping the gun to say that Capcom dropped the ball with the game. I don't think they did, because the game is still as popular as ever, if not more popular. I recently saw that when Akuma came out, they almost, if not exceeded the concurrent, you know, amount of players on Steam. Like it beat the record that was when the game came out. You know, the game's doing as well as it ever has. But I just kind of look at these little things here and there that just add up, and I don't know. I just don't know if I like where Capcom has taken the game so far. I don't know if I like the direction that they're going in. It feels like the story is in such a lull period right now, like they're almost too afraid to really move forward on anything despite setting up a ton of storylines. The characters, while, you know, fun and good, they're just kind of there a lot of the time. You know, there's so much focus on, you know, monetization and fighting passes and avatar gear and Battle Hub stuff, almost to the detriment, it feels, of the rest of the game. The release schedule has just been so all over the place that it's hard to even really nail down exactly what the problem is. Some content comes out very quickly between each other, some content takes months. It's just odd. But you know, this is the first year. And if any year is going to be rocky, if any year is going to, you know, be a bit all over the place, it's probably going to be the first year, because they're still probably figuring out how to get these things nailed down, how to figure out the best way to go about things. So you know what, I've said all this, and you know, I've said my piece, I've voiced my concerns. I'm not completely writing off the game yet, I'm not completely writing off Capcom. For me, the major sign is how they handle Year 2. If Year 2 is 4 characters again, and it's going to take another year, then there's an issue and they need to fix it. Basically, they need to really hunker down and just figure out what the issue is. If, you know, Year 2 is 6 characters again and the release is, you know, more kind of a bit more consistent, there's, you know, maybe it still takes a few months between characters, but there's less 5 months. There's maybe, you know, it's more 3 months between each characters, you know, and it would allow me to look back at Year 1 and go, okay, yeah, they were finding their feet, they were trying to figure things out, and I can forgive them for that. I can look at all the things, all the weird parts of this last year and go, yeah, I get it. But if Year 2 is just more of the same, then yeah, I really don't know how I feel. I would be concerned. I would absolutely be concerned for just the future of not just Street Fighter 6, but just future Capcom stuff. If they're having this much trouble figuring out the RE engine and figuring out how to, refine their creative pipeline, I don't know. It's just, I can't really judge anything yet until we know how year 2 goes. But, I'm very excited for year 2. I really hope we get some Street Fighter 3 characters, some alpha characters. There's a lot riding on year 2. I mean, I've had a lot of ups and downs with this game across this last year. I've really not played this game that much, especially compared to Street Fighter 5, which is a game that I was playing almost every day, towards the end of Season 1 into Season 2. Like, I was playing that game so much. I had so much fun with it. Whereas, for Street Fighter 6, I really have to find a reason to come on and, play it and enjoy it. It's not a game I can just hop on at this point. It's missing things that I feel like are very blatant omissions, I guess, very, very blatant and very noticeable things that just don't feel right until they're there. But yeah, overall, I think, is the game still the same, quality that it was when it came out? Personally, no. There is definitely some ways where I could argue they have dropped the ball. The gap between releases, the extremely predatory monetization, the abundant focus on, lesser quality avatar and battle hub, content compared to, focusing on more kind of stuff for the rest of the game, things that I find very disappointing. These are things that could easily be fixed in future years and future seasons, but for now it's stuff I am concerned about. But like I said, it just depends on year 2. It just depends on how the next year goes, and who knows, maybe if I like the lineup of year 2, if I'm interested in it, we can talk more about these things, a year from now, in June 2nd, 2025. We can talk more about the game and figure out, where things are going. Did they improve on areas that I voiced here? We'll have to see. But for now, if I had to rate the game, I would probably give it a 7 out of 10. I don't think it's bad by any means, but like I said, there's some areas I have concerns about. There's some areas I think they have dropped the ball in, but I can't be too harsh on it until I know if this is a consistent thing or not. If this is just the way things are going to be, then yeah, this year was not good. If it was just a one-off, then I can forgive it. But yeah, I'm going to leave things here. 1 year, it's crazy. Like I said at the start, it's kind of crazy. It feels like this year has dragged, but it's also come quick. I can't believe we're already at a year, since this game came out. But all I can say is roll on year 2, man. I'm dying to see the lineup. I'm very interested in seeing what's going on. So until then, I shall see you all later. Thank you all so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Thank you and goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.